Welcome to Little Warriors, the podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Horan, and on episode 2 of season 2, I'm sitting down with chartered principal clinical psychologist, Dr Rebecca Quinn. Rebecca specialises in neurodiversity, and I had so many questions to ask her. I hope you enjoy this episode. I never miss an opportunity to get into Lidl to stock up for so many bits for my kids, especially because my youngest is still in their Loopy-Loo nappies and they've got the Loopy-Loo biodegradable water wipes and the pants right up to size 7 as well. And do make sure to keep an eye on the Lidl Plus app for regular offers on the Loopy-Loo range. Some very exciting news. On the 27th of October, the Christmas toys are in Lidl. There is, of course, a leaflet and you can look online to check out what there is, but there is so much. They're reasonably priced. So many interactive and sensory toys for little kids, some digital toys, teepees are even there, dolls, but really brilliant things for Christmas presents and stocking fillers. And thanks again to Loopy-Loo by Lidl for supporting the podcast. Well, this is some episode, and I think one that a lot of parents need at the moment. So much information, but sometimes too information is tricky too. So on this episode, I have principal clinical psychologist Dr Rebecca Quinn, who specialises in neurodiversity, correct?
That's right, Rebecca, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. You are a mine of information. Of course, like anything, I discovered you through people and recommendations, but also your Instagram page. And we belittle and bemoan social media. But my goodness, you have so much great, open, honest, factually correct, scientific information on your page. So it is a great source if anyone needs it. Dr. Rebecca Quinn. And welcome. And I know that you're a bit like, the anticipation, this kind of thing can be a bit of a minefield. So we're going to keep this so easily relatable and accessible for people, because it can all seem a lot, can't it?
Yeah, it can. I think it's a term as well, neurodiversity, that's really in the public eye at the moment.
Yeah, why is that?
I think probably we're far more aware of it now, and also I think in America with President Trump, I think all of that I think has brought great attention and spotlight to neurodiversity and autism in particular.
Why? Because of his awful
commentary
about it?
Yeah, I think so. Just because of his claims that it's caused by vaccines.
I mean, honestly, so, but I do think before all of that horrendously negative narrative, I do think we were very much seeking information, diagnoses, help for people who felt maybe at sea or felt in their 40s. Where there's a lot of this recently, women who are getting diagnosed even with ADHD later in life. So I do think that was coming to the fore, and people like Stephanie Preisner coming out and talking about it. But I do also think in schools there's much more awareness, and maybe when, I don't know what age you are, but when I was growing up, I don't know if it was it was there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it probably was there, and I like when I look back now, I can think of kids in my class that probably would have been neurodivergent, but it was maybe explained as being bad behaviour, or it was just not understood.
So bold.
Yeah, bold, or there's something wrong at home.
Hyper,
not following the rules.
Yes.
And I think as us now as parents, I think we were maybe conditioned that way. And sometimes it does require a real reframe for how parents think and see neurodivergence.
Because you're right, it's like the silly kid, the bold kid, the hyper kid, the one that can't sit still, I can't sit still, or she doesn't understand, she's not like all of us, she's not normal. And it's all this, there was this kind of normalcy, and like you sit and you do this, and you're correct, we started to discover there were so many different types of humans and personalities, and finding the tribe, but also things that you needed additional support for. And I do think you're correct. There was just a lot of like, that person's just different. It's like, can't have that person over to our house because it's just too much.
And I think the thing was that the difference was seen as wrong, whereas now it's seen as being accepted, and a difference that can maybe bring a lot of strengths with it as well.
I know we had Adam Harris on. He's like, it was the negativity surrounding his diagnosis. You know, it's wrong. It's out there, it's different, it's weird, and then it's like his biggest strength. And like, the when you obviously have the right support, society are on board, your school are on board, your family, and you're thriving, it can obviously be wonderful. Not for every child and not for every diagnosis, but for some people it is not at all a terrible thing. I think it's all about the fact that you know, being forearmed or is forewarned. You know, obviously it's better to know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And the more information means that you probably feel more empowered as a parent as opposed to just like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Can we discuss the differences? And I'm going to be really silly because I think it's better for me to be stupid with my questioning because you can come across and do all of that. Neurodivergent, neurodiverse, autistic, what are all our differences of titles?
Yeah, so we're all neurodiverse, so we all have different brains, and they work differently and they're wired differently from early on in our development. However, there are some individuals or people who are neurodivergent in that their brains work a lot differently to most people's, and they see the world, they experience the world differently, they process information differently. We all do, but they do it to a greater extent, to the point where sometimes they might need support in getting by in everyday life. So I think that's the difference, is that the extent to which it impacts their everyday life. And so under the term then neurodivergent, there's a lot of different neurodevelopmental differences. We have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, Tourette's comes in under that as well. So and depending on, you know, what Google search you do or where you look it up, sometimes you can get a different list of differences under that umbrella term. So, but generally it's autism, ADHD, and then the learning difficulties as well.
But it's all
so
it's to do with our brain.
It is, yeah.
This is not to do with vaccinations.
No.
Or eating sweeties. Or your mum had coffee when she was pregnant. Like, let's myth bust all of this horrendous, like, which is so damaging, destructive and awful. Like, this is not an illness, disease, sickness, something that happened. This is how your brain is.
Yes, yeah.
And this is it. And I think for a lot of parents and mum friends that I have, it's seeing your child struggling and wanting them to thrive, or at least be content in their surroundings and to find, you know, some joy and peace, because it can be very hard when you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly why I wanted to have you on, because this podcast in particular is to let's get empowered. Let's know what we're dealing with. Let's build resilient children for this hard world that we're in. But it can be frightening for a mum and dad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that phase between knowing that there are differences there and then finally understanding what they are, and maybe, you know, that it maybe is autism or it is ADHD. I think that those years, and it is often years, Rebecca, unfortunately, because of the waiting list at the moment. Yeah.
I know we got a little bit of help for something recently. We went down a private route, but that isn't for everyone. That is expensive. You have to know someone. And I remember just thinking, my gosh, it is just so long.
It is long, yeah.
Particularly
it is sad. And I think it's a long time for parents to be questioning themselves and to not be able to advocate.
What do you mean questioning?
Properly.
Do you mean blaming?
They can do, yeah. They feel, oh, it's my parenting, I'm not doing this right. Or often I have parents that come to me and say, oh, you know, my baby was in NICU for a week, and I think that's why, like, the attachment in those early days has caused this.
That's really hard.
And then, and unfortunately they Google that, look it up, and then, you know,
someone will come back with something.
Yeah, exactly. You'll always find, you know, it's that confirmation bias. If you're looking for something out there on the internet, you'll usually find something that confirms it. I had a few glasses of wine the
first week before I knew I was pregnant. That's the reason. It's really hard.
Yeah. So that phase is particularly difficult when you don't have a definite diagnosis to use, almost, because it can provide you a gateway really into a lot of different services and supports. It also brings a sense of belonging with it and a sense of relief for parents. Yeah,
I think so. And the limbo land that you've just spoken of, like, it's hard because you're correct. You're Googling, you're waiting, you're watching the behaviour. People are talking about your child. Oh, didn't get on great at the party. Your mum might have an opinion, your friends. And so you start to really, you're correct, question everything. And then it's that waiting period. But it's really interesting you say about the peace of mind, the relief. It's funny how people are like, oh, it must be so awful when you find it. Well, actually, isn't it worse to not know, to not be able to support your kid, not be able to get down to their level and have these wonderful conversations that are a little bit different to what you're perhaps the approach you had before, which was get in the car, get your shit, why are you, and that kind of, you know, frenetic parenting where you're like, they can handle it, they're fine, and they absolutely can't. I know we had Dr. Aoife Durkin on about your highly sensitive child, which was a very interesting sphere as well, because we have to approach our child with the, you know, with what they're looking for really.
And where they're at,
And you're correct, that limbo. So the wait is really long.
The wait is long. But also there, what you said around, like, oftentimes when they do receive that diagnosis, I think the assumption is that, oh, it's going to be awful and very upsetting. But what I find actually, now bear in mind that I do work mostly doing assessments with people that have waited a long time, and I find that over that time they've almost come to this conclusion themselves, and I'm confirming maybe what they already know. Yeah. And it's actually a relief. In fact, I have parents coming to me saying, when I deliver a diagnosis or explain that their child is identifying as autistic, they say, oh, thank God, I actually was worried you're going to tell me that they weren't.
And I don't know.
And then yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know why he doesn't want to do it. And that is frightening too, because then that's a different journey. It's a journey of personality and I don't know, maybe even like your genetic makeup or your environment at home, or how and there is a lot then, and I think you're right, you do start to go, okay, what next? So delivering of the diagnosis can sometimes be key. It is key. And how do people seek? So obviously if you're going the public route, like, let's get into the kind of nitty gritty of it. Say a teacher or a caregiver in school has come to you and said, look, I think you need to start that process. If you're doing it through this public, and we don't want to scare people off because it is important, where are they going?
No, it's a brilliant question, and it's one that I get a lot, even since the kids have come back to school. I've been approached at various times bringing the kids over by parents that just don't understand the system, and I don't blame them. It's scary, but it's quite complicated.
Okay.
But to try and simplify that, Rebecca, there are three main routes, really. There's the public system. So at the moment, the Children's Disability Network teams, they definitely do autism assessments. So you can refer, that's if we're talking about autism, right? Yeah. So you refer into that team and you're on a wait list for an autism assessment there. There are some primary care teams that will do autism assessments, not many.
So this is your HSC jobbers, like where you go to get your, like if you went to Bray Health with your kids.
Exactly.
They might do, right.
Yeah, but few and far between. Usually what happens is...
And they're up the walls as well.
They are, yeah. So usually if they are going to do an autism assessment, it's more because the child is known to them for a long period of time.
Okay.
But there
I get that. They're in the system and they're like, exactly. Look, I knew your child, Louisa, and that's different,
But it is really the CDNT that's kind of mandated, I suppose, the service that's supposed to do these assessments. Then you have the private route, which we're all aware of.
So if you're doing the public if you are going to fill out, and like I'm going to just be open, honest, visceral about this, the forms are intense, right?
Yeah.
So there's a number of forms, and obviously that is specific to your child, and there's a lot to fill out, and I've seen these forms. I've had friends who've had to fill these out. So there's a lot there, right? So it's work intensive. They go off back, and then you really don't know when it's going to be November or in a year or in 4 years.
Yeah, and it depends. There is another route that you can go down. It's the assessment of need route.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is the most popular route.
AON. I've heard a lot of people go. Okay, so go on.
It is the most popular route because it comes in under the Disability Act. So legally, they have to complete the assessment.
This is to get support financially, I presume. This is to entitle, or no?
Well, yes, that's not the aim of it. No, the aim of the Disability Act really is to assess and identify their needs. And often that does result in a diagnosis that then allows financial supports to kick in.
Families. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that is the most popular route because, as I said, under the Disability Act, you're legally bound. The HSC have to complete that assessment, but that has led to a huge backlog. So by the end of 2025, it's estimated that 25,000 AONs are going to be overdue in Ireland. So it's quite a startling figure.
In a way, it's startling and horrendous, and like you listen to things on the news about this beautiful boy in the scoliosis situation where he was on this way, and it's so sad. In another way, and I'm trying to find my silver linings, Rebecca, like we are now more proactive. We are more engaged in what's happening with our children on the ground in schools and at home. We are hyper aware and vigilant. So in a way, I'm trying to go, that is a hideous number, and we can all just sit here and cry about that, or we can go, well, my God, there's more people who are going to get help. Instead of the lost boys and girls of 17, 18, 19 who are in university going, I don't understand why I'm having trouble reading, writing, or keeping up with my exams, and should have had a dyslexia diagnosis, or I struggle to socialise so badly, I have anxiety, or I don't understand anything. So it's that that's so terrifying to me, because you lose so many years to that. So yes, that's not great, but hopefully that'll improve.
And it is improving.
Yeah.
It is, like, there's millions been put into that to outsource a lot of those assessments to private companies, because typically those assessments are supposed to be done within the CDNT, but they're already backlogged because they're doing their work with the disability team that they work on. So they are being outsourced, and like you say, it is bringing light to these children's needs, because as part of that assessment, an educational assessment needs to happen, or an assessment of their educational needs, should I say.
Okay.
So it just brings awareness within the schools to what's going on for this child, which might prompt a teacher, for example, to set up an IEP with a parent, or ask the parents to fill out a communication passport. It definitely does bring awareness to their needs.
I know there was conversations about certain areas like maths and numeracy, and I know there was some support need, and it's about going, great, absolutely on board for that, or whatever we can get, and then discovering perhaps it wasn't all the other things that we were worried about, or and then the private route, and like, you know, I know people, so that I've first-hand kind of knowledge of this, and even myself, is kind of paying a few £100 initially to find, but you have to find someone trusted, right? It's not some rando, right?
No.
Someone as amazing as Rebecca, and you find someone, you have to find a slot, and you might be told by this person, if you get a WhatsApp or an email, I can see her in 3 months, right? So you're still in a waiting limbo, but you have a slot. You're paying a couple of £100 up front, and there's that initial phase of form filling, chats, interviews, conversations as a family, conversations on their own, and you will then be told, right, you need another. And yes, I do think and that's long as well, but there is that option, and it could be £2,000 by the end of it. Okay. So there's also that option if you're really like, I'm going to beg, borrow and steal to get this fast tracked. It's very Irish, and it seems to be what happens a lot with our health system. But then I look at things in America and I go, maybe we're very lucky in ways. Signs and prompts and moments that you're like, there's something I'm concerned about, as opposed to worried, devastated, but just concerned about with your child. Can we go through some of those?
Yeah.
And at what age do they start to become more tangible? Because I think when they're 1, 2, 3, 4, am I correct? We're all in our own zone. We're discovering ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of so if we're talking about, I suppose, autism in particular, or even neurodivergence more generally, like often you'll find that you're looking for signs in kind of 3 main areas, like their social interaction, how they communicate with others, and then different kind of patterns of behaviour. And as you know, like infants, toddlers, they're completely disinhibited, you know, so it can take a while, and often it takes until I find the social challenges of school maybe increase, and then the social interaction differences become more apparent. So I think what we're looking for is, because we're all different, as we said, and we all have our preferences for how we socially interact, but we're looking for differences that are impacting on their everyday life. So they're finding it hard at lunchtime. They don't want to go to school, maybe. They're coming home and they have that after school restraint collapse where they're falling apart.
So
yeah, exactly. Their nervous system is overwhelmed because they've been trying so hard at something all day, and
the kind of mask effect.
Yeah, it can be masking.
Performance.
It can also be, like, if we're thinking about neurodivergence more broadly, it could also be that there's an underlying learning difficulty there, and you know, school is so academic, word-based, literacy-based, it is. And trying to process all of that, if you've a struggle with how you process that information, you come home exhausted. So it's not always, I think parents, you know, jump straight into autism or ADHD when they hear that their child can't focus properly in school and they're coming home wrecked. I would always say, you know, look at the basics kind of first.
Academics is interesting that you went there.
Yeah, definitely have a look at that. Yes.
And that pressure with Tommy who sits beside you, and I didn't understand. That's very interesting, Rebecca. You're correct. We do always go, oh, just the meltdowns, not able to socialise, really unhappy, autism. And you're correct. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, because it can manifest like in different ways. They might be jealous of others in the class that are more able academically, or they might try to compensate for their academic challenges by, you know, acting up or, you know, clowning around or whatever it might be.
Wow, that's interesting.
Or they can just withdraw and get really upset about the fact that they can't follow what's happening and shut down, and then that can look like a social challenge, whereas actually it's the literacy issue. So you really have to be,
yeah.
you know, have all of your
ducks in a row.
Ducks in a row, and keep everything in mind, I suppose, to be
assume,
open-minded about it. Yeah.
Like she's really unhappy, she won't go to play date. Well, actually, she's had a really tough day in class. And
yeah.
You're correct. That's really interesting about the educational part. I think academics, we kind of strip down to over here, but actually that's a huge, and I know even for my girl, that was a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think it's in my mind at the moment quite a lot, because both my kids go to, 3 of them now actually go to a Gael school.
Wow.
So I've seen children who have moved from the Gael school who were presenting maybe with, you know, there was behavioural stuff going on at school, and they were talking a lot in class, maybe being disruptive in inverted commas, if that was just their way of participating, because they couldn't academically because they ended up being identified as dyslexic. But they moved then to an English speaking school, and they are a different child.
But like, this is the thing, right? Gael schools are brilliant, and we know there's, you know, high performance levels. It's also another language. Even if your ma and dad are speaking at home, or you go off to the Gaeltacht every summer, like, it is a new vibe for a child, and it's excellent, and we know that they're great. But you're correct, if you're someone who's really struggles with that, I know I couldn't put my daughter into girls, like, she would really, that is a huge,
it's a huge demand,
correct?
It is, yeah.
And if you're good at it, great. And like you said, that those children or that child getting out of that school to an English speaking school, great, thriving. I also think there's that focus on academics, and we are I've had wonderful Carl on from Playball, who's like, there's just not enough movement for children. We're told to sit in these structured environments. It's just so performative when it comes to academics. And in fact, if your child finds a passion, like, I was, you know, concerned about my child and happy, like, when you find your passion, be it sport or track or you know, hockey, or suddenly they become someone totally different, because they have something to love. And I think that sometimes we get a bit lost in there, just something's wrong, and it's like, well, actually just let them at it for a while too. So signs are that there is just a lot of emotional breaking down.
Yeah, there can be, and there's differences in how they socially interact with other people, or they find it hard. They might not have that social kind of know-how, or you know, approaching others in the art. They just don't see why that's important to make friends. They mightn't want to make friends. Their preference might be to play alone, and they might be quite happy doing that. There's often differences in their non-verbal behaviours as well. So like how they use their hands or their eyes to communicate might be different from you or I. And it's not about, so often, you know, there's that myth that, oh, autistic people don't make eye contact. It's not that, it's the quality of their non-verbal interaction is different. So their eye contact might be quite intense at times, or not there at all, or somewhere in the middle, but there's just a different quality to it. So how they communicate with others as well might be quite different. They might, for example, and this comes into what you were saying about masking. So often, you know, that social chit chat might be just doesn't come to them maybe naturally. So they might have learned off scripts socially, things to say to kind of start off conversations, particularly for older girls. I find that's just one of the ways that they kind of can mask is
that's so interesting.
Learning and listening
like a learned little kind of chat.
Yes,
like what that they've seen on telly or
exactly.
Stop it.
Yeah. So it's quite fascinating.
Kind of think that it is fascinating. So they kind of think that that's what's the right thing to
say, and then and we all do it to some extent, you know,
japers to survive.
Exactly. But we're not kind of compromising kind of fundamentally who we are, you know, whereas these are learned scripts that are put on. It's exhausting, and that's the other difference. Like, people often ask me, you know, what, like, we all mask, you know, people say.
God, yeah, to get out into the workplace when you've had a crap morning, Rebecca, you're tired, the shower wasn't working, the kid has puked. Let's be honest, we're all having to put our best foot forward to survive and work and relationships. And there's a lot of that as adults, and perhaps even kids feel. I often think, oh, my children watch how I am performative, or how I'm, when I really am just like. And it's about being able to be themselves, and we have to teach them, you know.
And there's a difference though between the masking that we do and then a masking that a neurodivergent person does, because what they do is sometimes it's even not conscious to them, but they're kind of compromising fundamental parts of themselves, whereas you and I, we might put it on a bit for kind of social nicety reasons, and then, you know, it's easy enough to kind of take off the mask. Yeah, exactly. We kind of fluidly move in and out of it. Whereas I think for neurodivergent people, it's exhausting, and they're compromising things that they need to regulate themselves. Like they might stop themselves from stimming, for example. They might force themselves into eye contact. They might learn off those scripts that I've mentioned. So it just requires far more energy, and they come away needing to kind of almost like a migraine effect, needing to stay in a room and
we've spoken
collapse
about
for a
that
while.
Regulation. I've spoken about it with friends, and even Adam was saying, like, you'd see him running to his next meeting now on his tippy toes, and he was kind of being funny about it, but he was like, that is my way of getting back to me, because I've sat here for 30 minutes. I would struggle with that. And I also know other children who would need the darkened, calm room where they play with maybe a switch or something, because that is something that for 30 minutes would be regulating them, or it's the running around, or it's the crying, but there's always something that is needed after that, and that's really exhausting.
Yeah, and I think regulation just in general for neurodivergent kids is absolutely key. The way we talk about like hierarchy of needs and this kind of hierarchy of supports as well, and down there on the bottom there is that nervous system regulation, their diet, their sleep, water. Their brains are 80% water. I think people forget that. So those basic needs, but regulation is so important. I just think if you think about how a child learns, like Bruce Perry has a nice model of it's regulate, relate, and then reason. So a child needs to be regulated, then the relationships that make them feel safe in school, and then the reasoning comes in, the learning comes in. So there, and I think you do need to do it in that order, and it's just particularly important for neurodivergent people whose nervous systems work and operate differently.
It's correct to say, I know back in the day there was a lot of Asperger's or different spectrum levels, or there was a lot of conversations about more on the spectrum or It is fair to say that your child could be autistic, but maybe will have the ability to thrive in that particular school with these friends, make great social networks, go to parties, go on to university, but there's just differences, right? And we're maybe always dealing with those differences, getting some support and regulation. But there's also children who really will not thrive in those circumstances and really need a lot of additional support. And we do also need to be clear about that and not just wham everyone in the same.
No, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's something I'm quite passionate about. I think the neurodivergent movement, it's fantastic. And I think there's a lot of voices that get to speak out about the autistic experience, but there's a lot of voices that don't and who are still neurodivergent. And I think those children would be autistic people who also present with an intellectual disability. Absolutely. So significant learning needs.
We've got our celebrities or the people in public profile, or people who, you're correct, can go on the news or do videos on Instagram and are fan-bloody-tastic. But you have your non-verbal children or adults, huge intellectual disabilities, needing a lot more support, minders, and I do sometimes think in this conversation it's all about the academics, the social. There's actually a lot of other struggles, right?
Yeah. And there are children that require special school placements as well, and that need far more supports. And I think it's just important to acknowledge those people. I do think their voices are sometimes missing from the social media conversations, and we focus on maybe Elon Musk or Greta Thunberg, the very capable, high achieving autistic people. But it isn't always like that.
What's an SET and an SNA? What is the difference? I sound so stupid, but what? Like I hear a lot about SNA and...
No, there's so many acronyms in disability and in neurodiversity that it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it. So SNA would be a special needs assistant, and an SET is a special education teacher.
Great.
So the SNA really is employed to help with a child's care needs. So they do really need to have quite significant, usually anyway, care needs. So such as support with like eating. If a child has eating, drinking and swallowing issues, they would require an SNA. If there was toileting issues, if they're at risk really of causing harm to themselves or to other people in the yard, for example, or in the classroom, an SNA would be granted to that child then. So whereas a special education teacher focuses on education.
Fine, okay, so it's quite different.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so an SNA is there to really support the child's needs when the parents aren't, or the guardian or whoever isn't there. You know, there's a conversation that could be a little bit over here, but I'll go there anyway and see how you feel about it, where you have a family where maybe it is not like everyone else's family. Like perhaps there's guardians in place instead, or there's separated parents, or it's a blended family, or a granny is minding a child with additional needs or who's autistic or ADHD. And I think we get scared because we do blame ourselves as parents. We're like, we can have no change, or we cannot separate, or we can't move to a different country because of this. Like, are there ways for a child to thrive no matter those circumstances, or is it key for things to be very stable and secure? I know it's a very loaded question.
No, it's a great question. I love it. And the answer is that, of course, we can support children. And I think it's unrealistic to expect that a stable environment can be provided to a child, any child, for their childhood. It's just that life is unpredictable. And I think to explain that to a neurodivergent child, even from the outset, that life is unpredictable, changes will happen. But it's how we manage those changes. That's the kind of fork in the road. So making sure that your child has the coping strategies in place to help manage what happens to them. And I often say it's not what happens necessarily, it's how that is understood by the child, how it's explained to them, and whether or not you support them through the emotions that they have in response to that. I find if a child is left alone to process something, a big change like that, oftentimes their imagination can take over. They don't know what's going on. They can't put words on what happens. So I think it's just very important to do what you can to explain what has happened. Use pictures, use visuals, talk them through it, put a language on what has happened, and go over it and over it again. And it's also key, kids are quite egocentric and tend to kind of think everything is their fault. So to help them understand that it's not their fault and they're not to blame. And that's probably two key factors. But also when the change does happen, so, I don't know, say you did move country,
or
for example. Or
grief for a grandparent, anything, yeah.
So around that time, to try and make their life as predictable as possible during that period, and try and make the environment and their routine as safe.
It's kind of open communication all of the time, and just not hiding and having anything that's a little bit grey. Yes, actually. Particularly with autistic children, I think that kind of innuendo or the subtlety for example, granny's gone to heaven and they're gone to sleep. So that doesn't work, to be honest, for any kid. All this kind of dry humour, sarcasm, innuendo, that's beautifully put. You're correct. It's a different brain and therefore is computing these things differently, and that can be deeply confusing.
Yeah, and I think the agenda that's taken over there is the parents' fear
100%
about hurting the child,
100%.
Whereas actually black and white communication, now within reason, obviously you don't need to put in every traumatic detail, within reason.
Saying granny sleeping is not helpful for a child.
No, it's not. It's like, well, when is she waking up then?
It was like someone told me that they spoke to their child about you're autistic, and they're saying, when does that leave? When will that be gone? Like, when is that done then? So is that a year or so? And that was so interesting to me. And I think that's, again, that conversation. So on that, Rebecca, what is the age the most common? And we're not talking about wait lists. We're just talking about the most common age to get a child or for a child to be diagnosed. When is that developmental? When is it kind of more likely that you know if a child is autistic or neurodivergent? What age is it usually?
It probably depends on the child. Sometimes from early on, the signs or the characteristics are quite obvious. But I would say, just anecdotally from my own experience of assessing these children, it's probably around early school age is the most common time. Right. So exactly. So between kind of 4 and 8, I would say. Wow. And then with girls, it tends to be that bit later.
Okay, I want to talk to you about that in a sec. Yeah. So 4 to 8. And then we're talking about maybe that early on, maybe 1, 2, 3, where what you're saying, huge personality, kind of differences, or like, what would that be? Like tantruming, or how does that present itself?
Yeah. So again, probably in those 3 main areas, the social communication and the kind of behaviours as well. And I think, you know, social and communication differences are there for all infants and young children. I think the real marker for parents, or when they get worried, I suppose, is, well, number one, if they're totally not engaging with peers in the playground and just not interested. But the other thing would be these intense passions that they might have, or like their preference for playing with the same toy over and over again. Or
they have a passion, but it's like a train, but it's not really deviating from that.
It's not deviating from it, and they're maybe not playing with the toy in the way that other children their age might. For example, I'm just thinking of a child from last week where they wanted to flick the doll's eye up and down, so that was kind of almost like visual stim for that child. They loved looking at the movement of the doll's eye, so rather than playing with the doll as a whole and doing social things with it was like no, they were fascinated by the doll's eyelid or wheels of a car, you know, spinning around. So there's differences in how they play, and that can be really obvious, I think, to parents,
because they're like, well, everyone else is playing. And then I loosely said tantrum there, and I want to correct that because that sounds, again, very negative. Tantrum. What I mean by is all children from a little age are, by the way, acting up, tantruming, screaming, needing their needs met, upset, sick. All of them are, by the way, my children do it incessantly. I'm talking about prolonged upset. Am I correct in saying that, or am I wrong?
No,
where
you're right.
Something goes on for maybe a lot longer than the 15 minutes or the 10, and it could be up to 40 minutes, and you literally do not know because there's nothing physically wrong with the child. Am I correct in saying that can be a key?
And it can be really difficult to figure out what the trigger was. So I think one in particular where it's hard to figure out is autistic children often have sensory differences, which means that they can respond differently with intense emotions to certain sensory stimuli around them. And for example, a young child, say they're 3, and they have a real sensory response to the smell of eggs. So the child is there's nothing going on. Daddy's making an egg sandwich, and suddenly there's a complete meltdown or a distress, or they run out of the room, and you're like, what is that? So I think meltdowns, they seem to come out of nowhere. There's almost always a reason for it, but I think that's kind of key as well. Or meltdowns maybe in response to change, where the change maybe was only minor.
We're leaving the home, the party, or granny says, or we're leaving the playground, or it's the transition.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's so funny you say that about the egg sandwich, and the immediate thing as a parent, like, well, for me, is to be like, what's wrong with you? You wouldn't verbalize that, but in your head you're like, what is wrong with you? It's just an egg sandwich. And it's trying to really change how you see things that you think are a bit like odd and a bit irritating, actually. It's like, why don't you want to wear those leggings because the label's that way? And, you know, why can't we leave at this and then the 5 minute, you know, these wonderful tools and tricks. If your child isn't neurodivergent and is neurodiverse, or is just, you know, out there in the world, it's learning. And we all have a little pack where I'm like, I know I need to give my kids a 10-minute countdown, because if I say we're going now, it's a nightmare. Or I know the clothes they will and will not wear. I know they don't want to have their hair brushed. Like, there's no point in trying to do that. That's just not happening for me. So they're always going to look like this for a few years.
Our houses sound very similar.
I mean? And I know these smells or this. And it's just differentiating from, these are my child's likes, loves, passions, difficult areas, or my child actually needs an AON. So sad, because I'm such a feminist. The girl thing. Talk to me about why it's later. Is it because we're such performers?
Basically, we are very good at masking in social situations, and I think teachers often think that neurodivergent girls they kind of come across maybe as being shy, a bit socially anxious, maybe highly sensitive is something that gets mixed up in there as well. So they tend to be better at masking, and also, you know, the passions that we talked about. So
hang on, I'm going to throw a massive spanner in. What if your child is 8 or 9 or whatever, and she has just full blown learnt that she's so smart, she's learned how to survive, but she is neurodivergent, and it's a struggle, but she has seen how mums and dads and girls and teenagers and TV shows and friends work. She's got it. She's got it down top. So no one really knows, but there are struggles. You go and do an assessment, your first initial one. And I know how brilliant psychologists are. I know how trained these people are. But could this child, and this is important for mum and dads to hear, be masking for that session, or absolutely could they be read? Stop it.
Oh, yeah.
Stop it. So there could be a lot of, I know how to answer this.
Yeah. And I think over the years, like, you just learn to become attuned to what is masking and what is not. There's also assessment tools to help you to figure it out as well. I think one of the key things that I've started to pick up on, or not start, like, have been picking up on, would be the kind of learned scripts, or kind of a different accent maybe when they're in with me versus how they are with the mum in the waiting room.
Brilliant.
Or their non-verbals. There's something kind of rigid as well. You know that their body isn't relaxed, so you know their nervous system is not calm in this situation, even though they're talking the talk.
Yes.
There's also, like, for older teenage girls that are autistic, there's the camouflaging of autistic traits assessment, where you can kind of get another sense of how they are. But, like, thankfully the assessment process is very long, and you don't ever rely on one session, particularly with those girls where you're really trying to figure it out.
If you're
there'll be
offered
multiple
occupational
sessions.
therapy, what does that mean? So if you're told, look, your child doesn't need to continue down this track and is not autistic, but you're offered occupational, what would that assist? Occupational therapy?
A number of things. So there are sensory differences, so it would help identify what they are and help them to manage them. It helps with emotion regulation as well, because the OT would work a lot with kind of movement and what that child needs to regulate their nervous system and feel calm.
But can an OT work with a child who isn't autistic? Yes.
Oh yeah.
So this is just a really
absolutely.
great. It's like going to a physio as a mom after. So it's a support system.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I think most children would probably
Should go to an OT. Okay,
would do well with some basic OT supports for
that's
sure.
amazing.
And they also help with what we call adaptive functioning or everyday independence skills. So, tips and tools for getting by in school with, organising their school bags, opening their lunch boxes, and like maybe how to use money, organise yourself in the community. Yes. So they help with those adaptive functioning tasks. Yeah. Can be quite helpful.
So I interrupted you there with my spanner in the works. So you're saying girls you're finding, or there's this data there to say are a little bit late in getting a diagnosis, correct?
They're later, yeah.
Right.
And the other reason that I should mention actually is the assessment tools for autism were originally designed for male, with boys in mind. So they are improving. I think just boys were picked up on maybe more quickly, so therefore so I think then the populations of people that they did the research on were mostly males. It is changing, and we do have this, these assessments coming out now, and there is far more awareness of neurodivergence in girls now.
And teenagers, you're at sea, you've gotten through school, you think everything's great there in secondary school, and you're really finding massive difficulties with communicating with your teen, and there's a breakdown in communication, and there are troubles there with personality. And I presume as a teen you can go, well, actually maybe we've missed a trick here and we can go and get this child diagnosed. Yes, it's not too late.
No. We've seen a lot of those actually coming through the AON as well.
Scary for a child because they didn't know.
It's funny though, because often the child comes in or the teenager comes in and they're like, I know I'm autistic.
Oh my gosh.
I've known this for 4 years, and mom just wants to make sure that I have the diagnosis now so that I can get supports or whatever.
Wow.
So I think we assume
beautiful.
No, it is, and I think that's one of the great things about social media, often
the conversations, the chats, the videos. The reels aren't all gals in their bikinis. Like, we do have some interesting, you're right, there's teenagers talking about their identity. How do you sit down, Rebecca, with your child? I'm kind of going for like 6, 7, 8, 9 and say, you're autistic, you have ADHD, because it's different when your child is born with Down syndrome or born with something where it's throughout the life they learn that this is something that's going to happen within a few years. How do you sit down and have that conversation?
I probably wouldn't sit down and have that conversation. No, well, I'll explain. Yeah. I usually, from the kids that I've worked with anyway, I have found that when parents take their lead and listen to the questions that they have, and when it comes up for them, so when they're starting to wonder, Mommy, I'm finding this really hard, or I really can't pay attention, or when they're starting to notice, and it'll come up maybe in conversation, and if you're not ready for the conversation there and then in that moment, it's like, oh, so you've noticed that's different, that's really important, you know what, we're going to come back to that, I'll chat to you about that later on, and then you can kind of go and sit down and maybe have that conversation. But or maybe not sit down and have it, often like go out for a walk. And
it's like anything.
Yeah. And I would start by even asking them about what they think about their brain.
Yeah.
And about how they are. Like, so what do you think? Like, and they might really surprise you about what they already know about themselves.
I know, I really find that with kids.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, no, I know that. Like, it's it's kind of gorgeous, mind-blowing and scary.
No, it is. And they often give me gems of like ways of describing things that I love to use, like lovely analogies that you can use that are so child friendly because it's come from a kid. I had one kid tell me that a child with ADHD, oh, you know what, it's like there's a remote control but it's glitchy and sometimes it gets stuck on the one channel but then it might just quickly move to the next one and I don't have much control over it because it just keeps moving, and then it finds a channel that's like really bright and loads of colours, and I just want to stay on that forever. It just blew my mind. It's like, gorgeous. Yeah, it was just so articulate.
What a way to describe yourself. It's a little bit glitchy, but my God, look at all the colours.
And just that it kind of got stuck on one channel for too long, or then it skipped channels. So it's just that, you know, challenge. So it's never an issue that it's not that you can't pay attention; it's that you can't regulate the attention.
I don't want to let you go, but I know we have to wrap up a few things, but I wanted to quickly, I want to surmise everything at the end with like how this is not the end of the world for parents, right? And I know for some it can be a new route, a new journey, can be tricky, it's challenging. We all know things are thrown at us all the time. But I wanted to say, we didn't speak very much there, and that is my fault about ADHD. With ADHD, and it can seem very like, oh my gosh, it's relentless. Is there great support there? Can there be a lot of help with the child who really is high voltage? Yeah, no, there's a lot more support now. Even thankfully the NCSE have brought in a new kind of way of supporting behaviour in school. It's called Relate, and it just focuses on regulating behaviour, regulating nervous systems and bringing in movement and music to support their attention in the school setting. There's so many different ways of teaching now as well. Where they use more visuals, they chunk information into smaller parts, they adapt homework, they can adjust the curriculum. Move more.
It's the movement, yeah. I mean, I can't sit down for longer than 30
we'll
minutes.
Do this,
you
and
know?
I'll need to get up. Like to expect any child to just sit for 8 hours. I mean, honest to God, like as adults, my little watch will tell me you haven't moved today. You need to. It's so beautiful for their brains. Any top tips for parents listening to that, and they are either unsure about their child or have gotten the diagnosis? Give us some gorgeous wisdom, Rebecca, to help us on our way, but also to tell us this is all right.
Yeah, I suppose just please don't try to change your child to be more neurotypical. Like, please meet them where they're at, and when you do, the potential that they have, it will bloom, like, because what you focus on grows. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I have seen it in practice.
Makes me so emotional.
I would say start with that. Like,
stop
just
trying to change our little things. They are what they are.
Yeah,
and they're fantastic.
And the more you love them for the amazing parts of them, the more of that you will see.
And to be clear, this is not a sickness, an illness, a bad thing.
I know it's
this
a
is
difference.
How our brain is.
Yeah.
You're doing incredible work. Do you love it?
I do. I love it. Yeah, I do love it. Yeah.
Like, it must just be so all the time interesting.
It's like, honestly, it's my fourth level education are those kids that I see. Every day, and no one child is the same. I come away with something new from every single child that I meet. I love it. There's just only sometimes I just can't get enough of it.
It takes a bit addictive as well, because you're helping and you're listening and you're learning and you're growing.
It can be. It's very seductive.
It is seductive. It's an interesting.
So it's trying to get the boundaries right and
stepping back,
and then making sure that I practice what I preach and give the time that my kids need to them, you know.
Not be roaring at them for being annoying about their labels on their clothes.
Yeah.
Look, we're all in this sea of like, you know, raising kids, and it is all intense. And then yet it's such a short few years and we're just all trying to get it right. No one is getting a perfectly right PS. Nobody. It's really tricky, but it's just knowing more, having this great information, not listening to horseshit from Donald Trump or Googling, or getting exactly what we need and those needs met, getting the support if we need it, and if we don't need it, just creating that village where we're just meeting our child at their, like, my two children are so completely different. I remember growing up in a house with completely different children. We were all completely different. But just, I think a more positive light is important for this conversation. It can be very Debbie Downer, it can be very sad, it can be very, and it is for a lot of families a very hard road.
Yeah.
But it's just opening up the chat, knowing more about it. And also, I will say this as a little bit of a caveat. We as adults and parents need to be very mindful in how we talk to other people's kids, or kids who come on play dates, or kids in playgrounds, about them being different or weird or odd, or because that is so dangerous how we speak. Because little ears and monkey see, monkey do. And if we other someone, our children will learn that. So we also need to kind of cop on at home as well.
Absolutely. Indifference begins at home.
100%. And I think we have for a long time, we're getting better, not being great at that. We've just been like, ugh, you know, and it's not okay. So thank you so much, Dr.
You're
Rebecca
very welcome.
Quinn.
Thank you.